This month, we are launching a new series on our podcast called The Queer Project. We are sharing the voices of our queer community for Pride Month. The Queer Project aims not only to share queer voices on our podcast, but to collect the queer history of Sault Ste. Marie. These can be oral history stories we share on the podcast, or we keep safe in the archives, or it can be physical objects that also tell the queer history and life in Sault Ste. Marie. We want to ensure our queer history, our 2S LGBTQIA plus history, is preserved for future generations so that they know we were and still are here. Warning: the following contains discussions of discrimination, BIPOC, sex identity, explicit language, and other mature content. Listener discretion is advised, especially for those under 13. We have kept these interviews intact to preserve the voices of our guests.
Hi. My full name is Pedro Caio da Costa Ribeiro, Sure House. And my pronouns are they, them. And my preferred name is Pedro Caio.
Perfect. Now, only if you're comfortable, can you tell me how you identify?
I identify as, and sorry for the people only listening to us, I'm also making some sounds as I'm moving things around. I identify as a queer, non-binary Black person.
Now, when and where were you born? Maybe just the where. If you maybe don't want to say how old you are, keep it a mystery.
Oh no, I'm actually very proud of my age, and most of the time I wish that I was older, if that makes any sense.
Just give it a few years.
I know, I'm getting there. So I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And I know most people just look at me and say, "What are you doing in Sault Ste. Marie?" And I do ask myself that question sometimes.
Probably more so in the winter.
A lot in the winter, a lot in the winter. But yeah, I came to Canada and to Sault Ste. Marie looking for safety, right? I've been in Canada we're in 2024, so 14 years now. 14, 1-4 years now, and I love it. I'm not going anywhere.
So when you came to Canada, did you come right to the Soo, or did you have any stops first?
I did have a lot of stops. When I first came to Canada, I had my previous partner. He was doing his master's, and we were married already in Brazil, and we were looking for universities that would that had already invited him and accepted him for his master's. And they were in 3 different countries, so we were looking for, searching for which one of those places would suit a mixed race couple that is also queer, and we also had the age difference, because I do have a thing for older men. My current partner is also a few years older than me. So we had the United States, somewhere in Europe, and Canada, and the United States was just a definite no when it comes to racism and homophobia. and transphobia.
Especially now.
Especially now. Imagine 14 years ago.
Yes.
So we came to Canada. He did his master's. We just fell in love with the country, and we just decided to immigrate right away. It was just a love at first sight. So I came to Toronto. That's where we landed at first. We landed in Toronto, and from there we tried different other places. We tried Montreal, we tried Quebec, we tried Calgary, and we ended up in Toronto again. And then many years later, I met my current partner, whom I love to the end of my life. His name is Roy. He's from Sault Ste. Marie. I honestly haven't even heard of Sault Ste. Marie before I met Roy 9 years ago. And that's why I'm here. We came back, well, he came back home, and I came to my new home.
So, what was your childhood like? You sort of spoke of safety, because we know that not every country, unfortunately, is fully accepting. So, how did you feel, sort of like your family accepting you, and just like your community and things like that?
It's a very interesting and a very long conversation, because I come from like the second biggest city, I want to say South America, which is Rio de Janeiro. And I know that it pains me to say that Rio is the second, because, I don't want to say that São Paulo is the first, but whatever. But I come from a very big, vibrant, and very, diverse city. And also, I come from a very fundamentalist Christian family. So that's how I was raised, and with fundamentalist Christian values. So that wasn't very safe for a queer person.
No.
Not at all. And I grew up in church. That's how I grew up. I was a part of the choir. Sorry, did I pronounce it right?
Yeah.
Choir, yes. I was a part of the choir. I was a ballet dancer for most of my life, like a classic ballet dancer. So at my church we had dance while we had music at the same time. So I was one of the dancers at the church as well for many years. We had a ballet school at the church, and I was a part of that too.
Oh, wow.
So that's what my growing up was like. It was a lot of church.
Yeah. So, like with that sort of church community, you sort of have like this idea of like sort of queer is like bad or just like no, so like you can't really start to like question yourself because that's something like scary. But when did you maybe start to like question more and then like feel safe, like more so just to like identify like with yourself?
That's a beautiful question, especially the way you ask it. You know how crazy I am about you and how beautiful you are as a person. I like know that I am gay since I was 9 years old. This is when I had my first crush, who also had a crush on me, so that really worked. And we were both the same age. We were both 9 years old. And we both had a crush on the same girl. We, in Brazil, again, safety. So we have those, which I guess here would be called a gated community.
Okay, yes.
So that's how I grew up, in a gated community. It was all those houses, they all looked the same. And there was a gate in front, so it was really safe for us to just play in there on the streets, right? So we would meet every day after school, and we would write letters together for her. And we would also start to like think and like, what would we say to her? How would we say it to her? How would we approach her? So we kind of started to explore that with each other. So like, oh, I would kiss her this way, and and I was only 9 years old.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any harm to it. It was just kids being kids and exploring things. And we kind of just fell in love with each other. And at the same time, I remember we were at the pool in my house, me and him, and we were, of course, kissing, or something that we thought was kissing. Because I mean, I'm 36 now. I know that was not kissing.
Yes.
That was just being kids. And my mom saw us. Like, I remember looking back, and when someone is standing at a window for so long, that when they leave, you kind of see the shadow of that the body left in that space. So I just remember looking and seeing that, like the ghost of my mother on the window. And I just and just by seeing that reaction from her, I understood that whatever I was doing was wrong. Right? So I remember he left, he went back to his house, which was like 5 houses away from mine. And I remember coming in, and I remember that there was that negative space in the air.
Yeah.
Like that negative vibe, and that like there's something wrong, but like I'm 9 years old, I have no idea what's wrong.
Yeah, but like, oh, I'm in trouble, but I don't know why.
Yes, like, why am I in trouble? Like, what's wrong? We were just like, I love him. What's wrong? Then after that, like, nothing really happened, I think. My mother and I never had a conversation about that. She never said anything that night. But I noticed that he changed with me. And my parents and his parents were also friends, because your kids are friends, so you're gonna become friends too. And I noticed that he changed. He started pulling away from me, and his dad would like not be cool when we were together in his bedroom, which used to be cool. Like, we used to shower together.
Yeah.
Because we're kids.
Yes.
That's what kids do. And then it started changing, and not that it stopped us. It still lasted a little longer, but right after that, I remember us moving to a different community.
Yeah.
And going a little bit harder on church.
Yes.
And a lot more things happened too, like in church. We were talking about church just now, and growing up as a queer person inside of a church is not an easy thing. And as I was telling you, it's something that I learned when I was 9.
Yeah.
So it's not really, something that someone told me, because it just happened.
Yep.
And I just knew that that's what I like. And when I was in church with all of my involvement with everything, I'm not a person that cannot be truthful, right? It needs to be real for me. So I went to my pastor and I spoke to her about it. We had the pastor who was the male figure, and there was his wife who was also a pastor.
Okay, yeah.
So I spoke to her because I felt safer with a woman.
Yeah.
And she was also a doctor of some kind, one of the doctors that take care of vocal cords and vocal stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, she's a smart woman, she will understand me. And the horrible things that woman asked me to do as my pastor and I tried those things. It's not like I didn't try. I remember being in her little room and telling her about my feelings, and being raw, like I like man, and like according to what I hear, your husband tells everybody this is wrong,
Yeah.
and I need to do something about it, and you need to help me because you're my leader. And she's telling me that we needed to explore those. Oh God, the name just flew out
Like
of my
the
mind.
conversion therapy.
The conversion
Yes.
therapy thing, and I'm looking at her, and I think she could see the look on my face, the horrified look on my face. And I remember her telling me that I needed to, like, if I see something, I need to just, you know, close my eyes and ask God to take that feeling away from me and to, like, help me not do it.
Yes.
And I remember trying it so freaking hard. And it was interesting because it was also at the same point where things were going wrong for my parents financially.
Okay.
And in my mind, everything was going wrong because I liked men.
Yeah.
This is God punishing my family and I because I like him. This is my fault. The amount of suffering and crying and like just crushed soul on my knees asking for God, please take these fucking feelings, away from me because I don't want this for my family. I don't want this for me. I don't want to be hated forever for everybody. It was really hard.
Yeah, that child mentality thing of like something's wrong, like, oh, it's my fault, it's the end of the world. Like, I think we've all sort of had that, but to that extreme, it's something a little bit harder.
I hear you. I hear you.
After that, like, did you start to, because like it seemed like your parents were sort of just like pushing it under the rug, like they weren't really, like, if we don't acknowledge it, maybe it's like not real. But now that you've sort of like confronted your pastor and she's like talking about conversion therapy, which we know never works, and praying the gay away, which again we know doesn't work.
I tried.
So how did you feel that kind of shift? Like, do you feel like she started like going around and like telling everybody, and then it was all of like the like, oh, we have to fix them now?
So the interesting thing is, like, even with that violence that she imposed to me, and like it's funny, I need to mention something because I remember leaving that session with her and I had to take a bus to go home. And I remember sitting on that bus and a man sitting next to me and being super flirtatious. And that man not only was a man I knew, he was married to a woman I knew. And he was also a Christian. And he was like talking to me about these things that he wanted to do to me every time he saw me. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But like the good thing again about me being in this big, vibrant, diverse mega city that is Rio is that even though I didn't have everything on my fingers like we do now with the Google in our hands, I was in a school. I had friends. I had queer friends at school. And like everywhere else, like everywhere where my parents were not there with me, I was openly gay. Like at school, everybody knew I was gay. I was actually the cool gay guy in high school that everybody, you know, respected. I was a dancer in school, like a classic dancer. I would go like during those yearly events at school. Me and my girlfriends, we would do like classic ballet stuff, and like everybody would be like, "Whoa, they're so awesome!" Like I was the cool gay guy at school. Everybody knew. My mom and my dad didn't know.
Yeah.
So like At church, nobody knew.
Okay.
But at school, everybody knew. I had people from school that were from my church. They were cool with it. And they also understood that nobody at church could know.
Yes.
Because it's so weird, because it's like all of us live in this double world, where in the church world we're all so nice and we're all so gentle. And as soon as that door is closed or the pastor left, then we're all just snakes.
Yeah. Yeah, so school became your safe space.
School
and
was my safe space.
Yeah. I mean, I can't
And
relate,
then
but
and then high school ended, which was exactly the time when I left my parents' house.
yeah.
I was like, bye.
Yeah, because your one safe space is gone, so now you have to find another, but you're also now an adult, so you can go off and you don't have to be tied down by your the places where you have to hide who you are.
I always tell everyone that life has always been really nice and gentle to me, like in the weirdest of ways. Because I was just telling you about my previous partner, which is the one who came to Canada with me, whom I came to Canada with. And he is the person who I met as soon as I finished high school. I finished high school, we met each other, and it was a passion thing. It was intense, and we were together for 7 years after that. But again, life has always been very gentle with me, because that meant that I could leave my parents' house and I could have my own independence, and without having to, work at first. I could go to university and not have to worry about where am I going to live, who's going to pay the water bill, because I didn't have to worry about that. Not until I was 25.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to add, again, that thing of being in a mega city, I think is really what helped me, but I want to be honest, helped me still be here, still be alive.
Yeah.
Because I honestly think that if I had my parents' situation in a city like Sault Ste. Marie, for example, in a small town, I don't think I would have survived.
No, the thing about the small towns is school usually isn't gonna be your safe space. It might be, but because small towns are just, everything is such closely knit, you don't have the just exposure to sort of everything that you do in a big city. In a big city, you have just everything there, so you are going to meet anyone under the sun. There's just going to be so many different people there that you can meet, and in
it's
a small
endless.
in a small town you don't have that. So I think like you say, you were really lucky to be in Rio, because you had your small community of the church, but your school was such sort of, I would say, its own metropolis, where you had everybody, and you could understand things, understand what being queer is, not just what sort of the church wants to portray it as. You can meet people and understand and explore yourself without having sort of that
and
fear.
my school again, life is just so awesome to me. In Brazil, we have this thing where you can do your high school and get a college degree at the same time.
Wow.
And we call it the technical high schools.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the one that I went to. And also the one that I went to, it was a public one that you had to make a test, to pass a test.
Okay.
kind of like when you go to university that you have to do
we don't have it really here in Canada, but they have like the SATs or whatever in the States.
Like that. Like I remember going to like the big stadium in Rio, like whatever, how many thousands of people doing a test to get into that school, and it was like from like whatever those people, like 10% would get in.
Wow.
And I remember being like it was from my year, it was like 140, and I remember I was like number 42, so I was like on the second class, and I was like, I'm so smart and I'm so pretty. So like that school, everybody that was in there was already like very political, very artistic. So everybody was there for a reason. So again, I was so lucky to be in there.
Well, and the other thing here with our sort of public schools is that the school you go to is based on your neighborhood. So the school you go to isn't really outside of your community. So like going to a technical school like that, like you're gonna get everybody like from like a huge wide area. So again, you're getting just so much more diversity, which sounds amazing. Like that would save so much time to have those two combined.
I hear you. But I remember hating my mother for it because she made me go and do nursing, which again, it's a beautiful profession, but not for me. When I went to do my practicum, oh my gosh, I remember, like I loved being in the mental health unit of the hospital, loved it. I was so successful with it. But during my practicum, at the parts where we had to see wounds and blood, all of my colleagues would just look at me and be like, they're gonna pass out, they're gonna pass out, watch it, watch it. And there I was on the floor, boom, halfway through cleaning someone's wound. The nurse is on the ground. So not for me.
No. But I guess that's sort of good that you did that, because that mental health training sort of leads into the work you do now.
Yes, it really does. It really does.
Yeah, it's sort of funny how sometimes you're like the little education paths that you go on that you're just like, oh, nope, not for me. You can take little parts still along with you.
It's so beautiful. Yes.
So, how do you feel, because you've been sort of like in Brazil with their sort of queer community, and how does that compare to, let's say, just the overall of Canada to start with?
I think the queer community is the queer community everywhere.
Yeah.
I think we have this beautiful, poetic, like beautifully poetic, supportive thing that we have just for being queer, that like that basic connection, that human thing that just because we're queer, we know.
Like you're automatically friends.
Yes. And like when someone is going through something, like even if you're like, I don't know, a non-binary person or a lesbian or a gay or whatever, you understand what that person is going through because you went through something similar. So like the queer community, it's really in the gray scale, easily comparable.
Okay.
I think a queer person will always be a queer person, and we will always carry those experiences, whatever more or less traumatic they are. There's always going to be a little bit of a trauma there. Sorry.
So then, I guess the biggest difference might be then how is that community sort of accepted in each. So, like already saying sort of, even though like Rio is huge, it's diverse, you had like this amazing safe space, but like there was like almost something that you needed a little bit more.
Yes. And at the same time, like it's not just because my family was Christian. Brazilian society as a whole is like this. It's at the same time it's really safe, but at the same time you know that you gotta watch out because at some point someone might need to show up as good values and may need to show their hate towards you. So yeah, it's like there's that really loving thing and accepting, and at the same time you can feel the oh wait,
Yes.
I gotta live by the macho man rules.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And now with Canada, you have been to Toronto,
Yes.
Montreal,
Yes.
Calgary,
Yes.
and now the Sioux.
And now the Sioux. I love the Sioux. I'm not going anywhere. I love this city. I really do love this city. I think, like all of the places that you mentioned, they all have their own beauty and they're all busy, big cities compared to Sault Ste. Marie. I think there's a lot wrong with Sault Ste. Marie, but I also think that there's a lot right with Sault Ste. Marie. And I think that there is a lot that wants to be right, and we just don't know how to get it to the right one. But the city is beautiful. There's like all this natural beauty around us. There's this gorgeous St. Mary's River that I was just talking about, the view that we have from here from the museum. There's the gorgeous rapids there at the locks. I don't know if you've ever like looked at the tiny little rocks and how beautiful it all looks when the water is coming through. And this place is gorgeous. I only have good things to say about the Sioux.
But it's probably a little bit different in like just Toronto. Like you have like an area known as the Village, which is like a specific area that is like just for the gays, just for the queers, and it's probably like a really different atmosphere where you have like this whole not like community per se, but like actually like environment for your community. Like there's so many more like events and things like that. And like, do you think the Sioux could ever, I mean, not get like that, but like become more, like have more like queer events and become more like just a more vibrant queer community in the sense that like there's more for the community in a sense?
I hear you. I think the Sioux is got a lot of potential. We have a lot of queer people in this town. I have so many things to say, and I don't know why I'm holding back. No, I think the Sioux has a lot of potential. I think to be very honest with you, like my first perception of Sault Ste. Marie when I moved here, my first fear was not about being queer. My first fear was about being black. I remember when we moved here, me and my partner, he's a white man with blue eyes, so like he can just walk around and he's from here. And I remember we bought a house, and it was a big house, a house that a person who looks like me should not own. And I remember moving in, and I remember the first weeks, I remember being very anxious. I smoke weed, so I remember being very anxious about smoking weed. Sorry. I remember being very anxious about smoking weed on my front yard or on my backyard, afraid of my neighbor calling the cops on me on my own house that I just bought.
Yes.
And I remember that being a fear, that being an anxiety on me. And yes, that was based on a first interaction that I had as soon as we arrived. I went to the post office to exchange a check that was on my name, one of those security whatever checks that you get on Canada Post. I got it at Canada Post in Toronto, and I needed my money back.
Yeah.
Getting it my own name with my ID. He did not want to exchange that for me because he did not believe that I was who I was telling I was. He did not believe anything that was happening. And I'm 100% sure that was based on what I look like and my skin color.
And maybe that you have an accent too. So
Yes.
it's just
that's
fortunately
a big
another
issue.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a big issue for me in the Suchu, the accent.
Yeah.
And even my name, that's so simple, people can't spell it right. Pedro, Pedro. I've got lots of different spellings, and I've got people looking at it and saying Pietro, Peter, Padro, and like to the point that at work I don't use Pedro anymore. I use Caio, Caio, because if you look at it really quick, you're gonna think it's ciao. So I'm okay if you say ciao. That in my language means goodbye. Cool. I can just say bye. And it sounds like Kyle, Kyle. So that's easy for people to catch on.
And I guess maybe a little bit more easier for like the English tongue to try and say.
Yes.
Yes.
Better than Pedro.
Now, how do you feel it was, like you came to sort of the Sioux and like you have the anxiety with sort of like the broader community as a whole, but what about like the queer community? Did you find that like the community is easy to find? Is it a little more hidden? I know sometimes like there's groups in the Sioux that we form and then we hide almost. We have our people and then we hide.
Yes, in a basement somewhere.
Yes.
Probably in the West End. So after I was able to pass that fear of, living as a Black person,
Yeah.
especially so close to the States, oh my gosh, yes. We started kind of looking for community things to do, like queer things to do. We moved in the middle of winter. It was December, so like 6-7 months we were happy not to do anything because there was a lot of snow cleaning that we haven't done before. It was a little overwhelming in the beginning and it was a lot of snow. So in the beginning we were okay to just focus on snow cleaning, and then because Roy is originally from Sault Ste. Marie, he kind of already knew some folks here and there. And we also went to a sex shop in town called Amore, for your pleasure. And it's actually a funny story because we went to the sex shop in downtown because we were like, okay, let's search for sex shop. That's where you're gonna find queer people or queer things, or you're gonna meet a queer person at a sex shop for sure. If they're not working in there, they're coming in there to buy some stuff. So we went to that sex shop downtown that I can't remember the name, and I'm not gonna share their name. They were very nice to us. And we were asking her, the person at the desk, we're asking them all of those questions about things that we were looking for, and we couldn't see it at the space. We're like, oh, do you have this, or do you have that, or do you have that, that toy or this toy? And then she looked at us and very gentle, I'm still very thankful to her, and then she said, I think what you're looking for, you're gonna find it at Amore. They're in the West End. And we went there. And Galen, who is the owner of this store, she was there. And that's the day I met Galen. And we just fell in love with each other. And that was a very welcoming, queer welcoming for us. Then again, life being very nice to me, because it was, I don't know, it was beginning of summer, like it was beginning of spring probably this time 4 years ago. It's like winter just ended. So and then we kind of joined the Sioux Pride Fest, and we kind of started getting to know more other queer people and finding where people were hiding.
Yes. And then you, how are you involved, with the community now? Do you do volunteer work, or how, or do you just maybe participate at events, or are you helping organize them?
I love the question. I at this time sounds so serious. No, I do volunteer work. I do volunteer work as the board chair at the club, the CHUS LGBTQIA plus community center. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm the board chair there, and I work with Katrina, and they are doing an awesome job there, and we are working on getting some fun together, thanks to a very good board member that we have that writes a lot of the grants, and I volunteer my time a lot right now with them. And I have done other things with other community organizations, and I've had some bad experiences with some of them, and I had good experiences with some of them.
Were there any events, sort of locally, provincially, federally, globally, that affected you, your family, and your community? So, well, first we have Stonewall, which kind of didn't really affect you because
we weren't here yet. But when we actually think about it, it affected us and everybody who is coming after us in a gigantic way.
Yes.
And it's funny you mentioned Stonewall. I was listening to, my best friend sent me a podcast, a Brazilian guy that has a podcast, a queer Brazilian guy that has a podcast, and he was talking about how political just being gay and queer and existing is. And he also touched on how political just having queer sex is, how politicized our sex is, how the fact that for us to kiss each other and hold hands outside is a big deal some places, and how political for some of us to be no, we're holding hands. No, we're kissing. No, we're fucking. And it's a political movement. It's a riot every time two men, two women, two queer persons are having sex. It's a political movement, honey. And we ain't going nowhere. But besides that, I think in our queer community in general, I think the AIDS epidemic is something that really impacted us in a gigantic way, as peoples, together as communities everywhere in the world. I think it impacted us, and it left a really big scar and a really big sore.
Well, just if you look at it, the number of people that were lost, people that were moving politically, fighting for rights and for equality, people like who were creating art, and all of those voices that were lost. And it's just such a tragedy that if you look at it, I don't think there are sort of anyone of, I would say, a little bit of the older generation, sort of like people that were around in the 80s, like the main part of the AIDS crisis, who didn't lose someone or and like in some way. And then now I think, I don't know if there is any person who's part of the queer community who doesn't know someone who is HIV positive or something like that. And even now there's still a stigma with it.
Yes,
and
big time.
Yeah.
Like, and I was born in the 80s. I was born in 87, like end of 80s, but still 80s.
Yeah.
The AIDS was still there. It was still happening. I remember growing up, I had this, he was gorgeous, gay, queer, openly gay man in the 80s. He was a singer in Brazil. His name was Cazuza. He had this big rock star mentality, and he was like, I was one of his biggest fans, and I was just a little baby. And he unfortunately, he passed of AIDS in the beginning of the 90s. And like, my mom's best friend at the time died of AIDS. And like, that's what I grew up with as well. And like, I remember when coming out to my mom, I remember the first thing she made me promise her was that I was not going to be a cross-dresser, and I was not going to, die of AIDS, because that's my future. You're going to be a cross-dresser and you're going to die of AIDS. And like, that's kind of hard. Like, it's a hard responsibility to kind of hold. And when I came to Canada with my partner, and we went back to Brazil together, to Rio, because he was doing his master here, but he was half here, half in Brazil, so he needed to go back to Rio to finish the half of his master's there. And in between them, we kind of parted ways, and I ended up becoming HIV positive. And I remember when I heard that for the first time, I also heard in a really cruel way. I was home, I was watching TV, my auntie was there, my auntie Vera, I love her. If she ever hears this, Auntie Vera, I love you. She was a big support in my life. But I remember my phone ringing, and I was actually getting ready to do plastic surgery. Yes, I'm from Rio de Janeiro. We're very shallow down there. It's part of our culture. We turn 18, we do plastic surgery. So I was getting ready to do plastic surgery. I was going to do a liposuction at the time and some other details. I did blood work for plastic surgery. And the lab guy called me and said, hey, have you ever tested positive for, no, hey, how many times have you tested positive for HIV? And I'm like, what? Tested positive for what? I'm just doing blood work for, liposuction.
Yeah.
Like, let me be. And then he said, well, you're gonna have to do another one because you're HIV positive. And like, I just remember like not seeing anything around me. And like, my world just ended, because remember when I was growing up, people were dying of that. That's where my mind went to. And it didn't matter at the time all the information I had, because remember, I went to nursing school. I knew that AIDS wouldn't kill you anymore, that HIV wouldn't kill you. So I knew that logically, but my emotional brain just broke down. I remember going to my bathroom. At the time I had a black bathroom. So it was like all black tiles all over, and it was one of those rain showers.
Okay.
So I remember just opening that, lights off. It was just, perfect uterus like
Yes.
kind of environment.
Yeah, entering the void.
Yes, entering the void. So like that warm water just going on my body, and I remember just feeling that like I get goosebumps just thinking about that moment. But I remember that water just touching my body, and me thinking about that singer I was just talking about, probably had his music on the background. And I just remember sobbing in the shower thinking, this is probably the last shower I'm gonna have. Like, my life is over. Like, what's gonna be from here? Like, am I gonna like move to an asylum to the lost and found souls, the souls that nobody want to live here? And I remember just feeling that solitude, like I'm here and I'm alone, and there ain't nobody gonna help me now. You know what I mean? Because, like, I'm cute. Yeah, I'm 20 something. I was 24. Yeah, I'm cute. Yeah, I'm 20 something. No, I was not 24. I was 27. I'm cute and I'm young, but now I'm also HIV positive. So I also come with, it's like you have a stain on you now.
Yeah.
So, and that's really what made me come back to Canada, because in my queer community in Rio, there wasn't acceptance.
Yeah.
And I remember coming from Canada, where I knew already people living with HIV who were openly living with HIV on Church and Wellesley, and we're very proud about it, and we're very open, and we're very loud, and we're very queer, and we're beautiful. And I said to myself, what am I doing here? Why do I want to be less than?
Yeah.
When I can be there and walk into my freaking power and just be me.
Yeah, so that sort of like just became another thing that really, I guess, changed your sort of outlook. Because yes, we sort of know that HIV isn't like a death sentence anymore, but the stigma is still there. Like we know it's not, but we almost treat it as such. Like, you don't die physically, but it's almost like a stigma that like kills you in every other way because of just the idea that's sort of behind it, and how you have to be sort of bold and confident to start to change people's minds.
Yes. Again, life just being so nice and gentle to me. When I found that out, I remember calling my plastic surgeon, because he's the guy who's gonna get the results, so I better call him. And I remember him just, he's such a gentleman. I love that man. I will share his name by the end. I remember. Dr. Adriano. He's the best. And he speaks English too. So if you're looking for plastic surgery, please go to him. He's awesome. And I remember him being so gentle to me on the phone. I called him right away after my dramatic shower. And he just said, hey, you're okay. Like, this is not the end of the world. I know the best doctor in Rio, and I'm going to connect you with her, and you're going to be fine. And he did connect me with the best freaking virologist. Thank you. In Rio, who worked at the institution called Cazuza Institution, because of the person who died of AIDS back then. His mother put up that institution for people living with HIV and for research and all of that. And my doctor was one of those big fancy doctors. And oh my gosh, that doctor was an angel. And she really didn't even want to put me on antiretrovirals right away, because she was just so happy and impressed that my body was fighting it on its own. Like, I didn't need to take any pill.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting down and putting my hands, because I guess everybody already noticed I'm very dramatic. So I remember just, thinking to myself, like, I can't live like this in my mind all the time. Um, and I remember telling her, Dr. Loretta, I just need you to prescribe me the pills just so I can have some peace of mind. Because I know that once I take the pills, in 6 months, I'm undetectable. And I know that I'm not passing this along.
Yes.
Because I don't want anybody else to go through what I did in that shower in those 20 minutes. That was enough for a lifetime. I don't want anybody to go through that. I don't want anybody to have to doubt themselves all the time. I don't want anybody to feel less than. So I don't want to pass this forward. And I remember her just smiling at me and saying, okay, if that's your decision, that's your decision. We're gonna move forward this way. I just need you to know that once you start taking the medication, you can't stop anymore. It's, a one pill a day for the rest of your life until, something else comes along.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm okay with this decision. I'm happy. It's, we're in the 2000s. Things are getting better. So it just gets better every day.
Yeah.
It's not going worse, at least not on the HIV world. Maybe in our political one, we're going backwards, but that's a different conversation for a different episode. And probably a different person. But yeah. And so I started taking my pills and I became undetectable. And for those who don't know, undetectable is when your viral load, and I'm not going to give you a lot of information because you probably have heard Roy already explaining so much about viral load. But it's the way that the virus is counted on your blood when they're doing the blood test. And what the medication does is that it suppresses the viral load. And what that means is that it's still in your body, it's still in your blood, but it's not really there. It's like just the shadow of it can be seen because the virus is really suppressed. So you can't pass it along. Even if you have sex without condoms, you're not gonna pass it along, which is a thing that I'm very thankful for. Thanks for medicine and for bringing us here for where we are today. Not just with HIV, but all of those other things that Mpox and what else? COVID. That was just yesterday.
Yeah. Now you're feeling like empowered. You're starting this. What is like the next step of your journey? Like you were saying, like coming to Canada, but what other steps?
Yes. So I came to Canada, and the first thing when I came to Canada was, I was already a person living with HIV, right? I was also a single person. So I was, remember the first time when I moved, I had a partner, which means that you have support with you. This time I was alone. So it's like, okay, I'm alone, kind of broke, don't have a lot of money. What am I going to do? Like, this is my decision. I'm not going to come back. Like, this is the life I'm choosing for me. So I went to a place in Toronto called the Toronto People with AIDS Foundation. And I thought to myself, I'm going to find help here. So I went there and I did their intake. They were super nice to me. I had an awesome caseworker. His name was Rajesh. He was the best. He's awesome. And he really helped me navigate that moment of my life. Because I remember him telling me, Pedro, here's the plan. You're here. And I remember telling him, like, I don't want to depend on government money. I just want to be able to, go to college, get my diploma, find a proper job. Because I know that as an immigrant, everything that I had done already in my country, which was, I'm a psychoanalyst in Brazil. I know I couldn't be that here. And just so far, all the jobs I could find were like cleaning jobs or cleaning jobs or cleaning jobs.
Yes.
So I wanted to invest on me so I could do what I know my potential is. So that's what I came to him with that need of like, I need to do something. I can't just be a cleaner. I need to do more than cleaning. I love cleaning, but I need to do more. And I remember him and I setting up that plan where I was like, okay, because you're a person living with HIV, in Ontario, you are able to apply for the Ontario Disability Program. And they will help you go through college and they will help you with buying your pills every month, which was another concern I had.
Yes.
Because in Brazil, cheers and kudos to the Brazilian health system, we get those pills for free every month. And in Canada, they cost more than $1,500 per month for 30 pills. So that was another concern I had because, I brought 6 months of pills with me and I knew, okay, in 6 months, I will need pills, which means I need $1,500 besides rent, money, bus, and living.
And that's only for 1 month.
And that's only for 1 month. So when he told me about this, that I could apply for ODSP and I could get my drugs taken care of, it was like,
yeah, just huge weight off your shoulder.
I can actually do my plan of, getting a degree and becoming a person.
Yeah.
Sorry, microphone. And that's what I did. I went through ODSP. I went through college. I took paralegal, which was something that I thought would, be a connection with kind of, supporting witnesses. I thought this would kind of be cool. But in the end, I was like, okay, there's a lot of just admin work and not a lot of witness interactions.
Yes.
So I was like, cool. Yes, and that was a really changing thing. Also, at the Toronto People with AIDS Foundation, which is also called PWA, when I went there for the first time, I saw this very handsome man sitting there, one of the staff workers. And I remember just being very like, when you're just shook by someone's beauty. And that someone also look at you and you're like, oh my gosh, they see me. So I've seen this man there, this very handsome man, and then I became a volunteer there. And this man now is my husband, and it's been 8 years that we're together. But the Toronto People with AIDS Foundation in Toronto, they opened a lot of doors for me, not just as support as one of their community members. They also supported me, like I would just go there and volunteer my time pretty much every day. And then I would start coming up with new ideas for like cool peer programs to like, not peer programs, sorry, for volunteers, to prepare volunteers, to give volunteers hard skills for people to find jobs after they spend 6 months in that program.
Okay. Yeah.
So as soon as I introduced that program to the director of programs and services, of course he offered me a job. So I also worked in there. And then from there I also got this awesome opportunity for me, which was to be the executive director, executive assistant. So I was this, empowered person living with HIV, being an executive assistant, which is also an immigrant, which is also a damn queer person, which is also, black, which also has a large nose and curly hair. And that to me just, it meant the world. I was like, oh my gosh, look at what I have been able to achieve just by, believing in myself and like understanding that I'm good enough. Yep. And I mean, now I say it like it's easy, but it was not just an easy thing. Yes, I'm just gonna believe in myself. It was that constant repeating it to myself in the mirror every morning. I'm okay. I'm enough. I can do this. I've been through worse.
Yes.
There's nobody there to hold my hand, it's just me. So I think that moment was really when I was able to just kind of like grow up, become an adult,
Mm-hmm.
and like just walk into my power.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also that like meeting Roy, my husband, he helped me a lot too on that walking into my power kind of processing my life, because he's just awesome. He just believes in me in a way that even I don't believe in me sometimes, and I think anybody should be lucky to just have a partner like that believes in you and that's like, no, you're going to do this. I think you can do it. But babe, I don't think I can. You can. He's one of those that like even when I tell myself that I cannot do it, he's like, you can. You've been through worse. You told me that.
Yeah. And so we are going to be doing an interview with Roy. So if it hasn't already been released, it will be released later on.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll definitely have
Stay
to hear
tuned.
that. Yes.
Yes.
So what are you up to now here in the Sioux with work?
Yes. So now in Sault Ste. Marie, I work for the Ontario Aboriginal HIV and AIDS Strategy, also known as OHAS, OAHAS. And they are a provincial HIV service agency, HIV service organization. And I did work with like when I was working with PWA in Toronto before moving to the Sioux, and actually even after moving to the Sioux, because I living here in the first year, I was still working in Toronto. So I would go to Toronto for 2 weeks, live there with my best friend, and then come back home for my husband and my kids, aka my 2 dogs and my cat. So like that transition year for me was very difficult because again moving to a white city, a person with a very immigrant name, Pedro Caio da Costa Ribeiro. People don't even know what to make with those letters together. What sound is this? So it was very difficult to find a job at first. I remember sending resumes everybody like everywhere that would match my education and my work experience and my life experience, and I wouldn't even get a phone call or an email back to say like, hey, we're not interested, maybe try this or try that. And then I saw an opening at OHAS. It wasn't actually that simple. I actually met a person. His name is Skyler, and he worked at OHAS. And he's a beautiful, powerful Indigenous man. And I remember him saying to me, like, Pedro, like, you should be working at OHAS. Like, you should apply for OHAS. And then I did. And then I got the job of peer engagement coordinator here at OHAS Sault Ste. Marie. And I had this beautiful challenge of starting a peer program for OHAS with OHAS in Sault Ste. Marie. And I thankfully had really, really good support from my director. I just love them so much. Their name is Flint. If you're listening, Flint, I love you. And they were like super supportive and like I learned so much from them. And just like going through that as I was also going through other things and also got support from OHAS. And I do want to talk about that too if we have some time.
Of course, yes, definitely.
When I want to say a year and a half ago ish, it's a year and a half ago now. It was December of not last year.
2022?
Yes.
Okay.
So a year and a half ago. I was at work, new at my work at OHAS. I got a call from Algoma Public Health, and it wasn't a pleasant call. Um, and it was a call telling me that I needed to disclose my status to everybody that I had sex with. And this just goes against so many laws. And I remember the question that the person had was, are you aware of your duty to disclose? That was the question. And I remember my answer because just a few weeks before, I have had a training with the HIV/AIDS Legal Clinic of Ontario. So I knew the answer to that question. I was very proud of myself. I was feeling very empowered just there because, I'm also a paralegal.
Yes.
So I'm like, yes, girl, I know the answer to your question. I know what my duty to disclose is. None. I don't have a duty to disclose because even though I'm living with HIV, I am undetectable and I have been undetectable for more than 6 months. I don't have a duty to disclose. That was my answer to her. And she repeated again to me and she said, no, you have a duty to disclose to everybody that you have sex with. And then she asked me who were the people that she needed to call. And I remember telling her that if anybody would be my husband, Roy, who already knows of that information because he married me. So whoever I had on the phone, hang up the phone and called Roy. And that was just, a breach of so many different things. But as you probably realized, we've been talking for 3 hours, 2 hours. I do not keep my mouth shut. And my power is on my words. And I mean, of course, when it happened, I was distraught because the impact on me was a little bit bigger than the impact on Roy.
Yeah.
Because I'm also an immigrant. I'm also a person of color. I also have an accent. I'm also not from this community.
Yes.
I also don't have so many other things. And to me, when that happened, besides the fact that the person talking on the phone with me, when people talk to you like you're stupid, like you don't speak their language.
Yeah.
Can you understand me? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's how she was talking to me. And I can feel when people are talking to me this way. Like, I can feel when you're choosing easier words for me to understand what you're saying. Like, babes, I've been living here for 14 years. I speak English, French, and Portuguese. How many languages do you speak?
Maybe like half of one.
So like it's very offensive to me when someone speaks to me that way. So there was also that going on. And honestly, after that phone call, I remember getting home and just telling Roy, like, babes, I just feel like there's a target on my back. Because like now I'm, the dirty black guy that is living with AIDS.
Yeah.
Because that's what it felt like after that phone call. And then we kind of, we slept on it. We wanted not to be angry. We wanted not to be emotional. We wanted not to be about us.
Yeah.
Because what we realized, because remember, both of us work in the HIV sector.
Yes.
If you haven't heard Roy's yet, please go listen to his episode. We both work in the HIV sector. So we know what's going on with other people living with HIV in Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma Public Health. So we decided, we thought to ourselves, not everybody has the privilege that we have, which is we both work for an HIV organization that understand what living with HIV is, understand what the stigma of living with HIV is, which understand that, listening this kind of thing from the public health unit where you live is not an easy thing to hear. And that also understand that something needs to be done about it, because that's the kind of organization we work for.
Yeah.
So we just thought to ourselves, this is our opportunity to bring change to Sault Ste. Marie, which is also something that we always knew we were bringing with us, because it's just who we are.
Yeah.
If we're here, we're gonna bring change, even if it's the tiniest of changes.
Yeah.
Like whatever. So what we decided on was that we were going to call the HIV Legal Clinic of Ontario, which is also known as HALCO. So you will hear me talking about HALCO. It's the HIV Legal Clinic of Ontario. So we called HALCO, and we told HALCO is a very busy place, as you can imagine. So the first thing we did was we left a voice message, and it was also like end of COVID, so there was still some COVID restrictions here and there. So we left a voice message, and we got back from one of their lawyers, and we just told them our story. Of course, we were still a bit emotional. It had just happened. And because it was December, it took a while for them to get back to us. Christmas, New Year comes, January, all of those things. And when they got back to us, they kind of already had a plan of like what they kind of wanted to do. And from the beginning, we all understood that we wanted to take a restorative justice approach, which basically means that our end goal was not for Roy and Pedro to get anything out of this. And to be honest, to say that we didn't get anything about this, there was one thing that was important to us, which was an apology. And it didn't matter if it was a public apology or a private apology, we didn't care. We just felt that we deserved an apology because we are members of the community and we are receiving wrong information from our public health unit.
And you only knew that because of the training you had done, the work that you do. And so just imagine if you were like an immigrant, you had an accent, you are a person of color, and you hear this, but you don't have any of that background. How much worse could that situation have been? And you have your husband, Roy, but if you were single, then they automatically assume, oh, well, you're probably sleeping around. There's a huge list. So now you're being uncooperative. So we're going to have to find this huge list. And so that probably was also a factor. Of you didn't want that to happen to anybody else.
No, I really didn't. We really didn't. And as exactly what you said, like I was also saying that before about like Roy and I had that understanding that other people were going through the same, because we hear that at work. Like we know other people living with HIV. And that's what people living with HIV do. We get together and we share our experiences with each other. We support each other. Sort of like very similar to what we do as queer people. We just get together and we want to know how you're doing. How are you getting through this bump in your life right now? Oh, I've done this when I was going through something similar. So that's what we like to do. And like people were having very similar experiences, and you just feel powerless as part of the community, because this is your public health unit, the one that's supposed to be taking care of your health as a public, and they're not. Or at least to us it felt like they weren't at that time. But what I like to say too is that as much as that experience was very traumatic at first, and also at first, like our first, before we called Halco, sorry, I totally skipped that part, and it was such an important part of that experience. Before we went to the extreme of going to Halco, of calling lawyers and whatnot, I went to my caseworker at Harp, which is where Roy works, but I had my own caseworker. I asked her if I could mention her name, and she said yes. Her name was Shanna. And I went to my caseworker to ask her for support because, as a community member, because in that moment I was not an OHAS staff. I was Pedro Caio community member of Sault Ste. Marie community, who is being called by Algoma Public Health. So I went to HARP to talk to my caseworker there, who is the person that, once I moved to Sault Ste. Marie, I went there and I said, hey, I'm a person living with HIV. I'm here to seek supports. What are the supports here for people living with HIV, etc. And then Shanna sent an email to the Algoma Public Health, whatever, director, whatever. And we never got a response. So then I went to my doctor. We went to our doctor, Dr. Castellani, amazing doctor. He also, beautiful advocate for people living with HIV in town. He also sent an email to Algoma Public Health. Never got a response. And that's when we looked at each other and were like, okay, something really needs change. Then we connected with Halco. And that's when we're like, no, something is really wrong here.
Yeah.
Because if, two different places, and it's not like, we're not in a big city where you're going to be receiving 10,000 emails a day. And we waited 3 months to get a response. And we never got it. But that was then. After that, once we connected with the lawyers and the lawyers connected with Algoma Public Health, then things changed. Then we saw an Algoma Public Health that was willing to change. And that's all we really wanted. So we did get the apology we want. We got that apology. Which again was really important to us, just as a member of the community, to know, hey, the place that is, that my tax money pays to take care of my health is actually worried about my health. And there was also really cool things that we were able to do because of that. That happened there, right, with the lawyer and whatnot. Because what we proposed to Algoma Public Health was that we would come with training, with updating training. The HIV Legal Clinic of Ontario, HALCO, would come in with, updating them with what the legal responsibilities of the public health is, the public unit is, and whatnot. And I came in to tell them my story of, as a person living with HIV, what's that perspective? So they could also understand that it's more than just, a stat number, or, that individual that you call that you never meet. I'm a person. I'm a human. I have a face. I have a voice.
So doing that sort of emotional training too, because maybe it hit you a little bit harder too, because the way you found out you were HIV positive was, again, on that phone in a not positive way. So let's just say I don't think you and the phone calls are super great.
Nicole, I think this should also be a therapeutical session.
I thought you were supposed to be the psychoanalyst.
Right.
Or you can't psychoanalyze yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
But that does make a lot of sense why I don't like talking on the phone. I really don't. But I do it for work, and I'm kind of learning to kind of go through it. I'm joking, I do like talking on the phone.
Well, I think it's also sort of that millennial thing of like, I can't call or I can't pick up the phone of somebody I don't know. It's like that, like,
Yes.
I can't do that. I'm a millennial. I can't pick up the phone.
No, I'm kind of getting over it. The closer I get to 40s, I'm like, okay, now I'm an auntie. I have to pick up the phone. I also, the other thing that came from that too was something beautiful that we did here at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, which was the HIV non-disclosure event that was a partnership between the HIV/AIDS Legal Clinic of Ontario, the HARP HIV/AIDS Resource Program, and OHAS, which is where I work, the Ontario Aboriginal HIV and AIDS Strategy. Those three AIDS service organizations put their, money and resources into putting together an event for community at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, where Ryan Peck, the executive director of HALCO and their main lawyer there, awesome guy, came in and updated our community on, hey, those are your rights as people living with HIV, and this is what you should expect from your public health unit, which was very similar to what him and I did to the public health unit, which is like, hey, this is your responsibility as public health unit. This is those are the rights of people living with HIV, just as a reminder. And it was a beautiful event. It was beautiful to see, I don't know if you know that, but we had people coming from Sudbury to that event. Like, we had community organizations coming from Sudbury, sending their staff to be able to hear from. We also had folks coming from Timmins, all the way to Sault Ste. Marie, all the way, like, it's super far.
In the north, we measure distance a little bit farther. It's like, oh, it's so far, but it's just like just all the way across the other side of town. And it's like, it's so far.
I know. It's just there. So, like, folks from Timmins, Sudbury came for that event. But the most beautiful thing for me was looking and just, seeing our community there. People living with HIV, our queer community was there. Our queer leaders were there. And it was, like, beautiful to see. I just love when I see our community coming together for anything.
And yeah, it was really well attended. Like, it was packed. It was really nice.
I remember, like, having to, like, ask people for more chairs.
Yeah. We were like, oh.
It was a really cool turnout.
Going in the back, like, getting more chairs, yes. But I think that's like always a good thing of having to, like, go and get more chairs, because that it's something that is needed, or that people, like, really wanted. So
yes, and we don't have any spaces for people living with HIV in Sault Ste. Marie. The same way as we don't have spaces for queer people living in Sault Ste. Marie. We don't have a lot of those spaces. So anytime when we're able to create those spaces, I just feel like our community is so thirsty for it that we all just come out of our basements or our attics. So it's just beautiful to see our community together, celebrating each other. And on that note, we also have right now an AIDS Vigil organizing committee that's going on as a partnership between OHAS and HARP. And we have folks living with HIV informing us on what they want the 2024 AIDS Vigil to look like in Sault Ste. Marie. I know that for many years that was an event that was held by different organizations, but I also know that since Roy and I moved up to Sault Ste. Marie, him and I have been the ones, holding everything together and organizing it every year. This will be, I think, year 4. And it's just getting bigger and bigger. So it's just a reminder to everybody that we are still here and we're not going anywhere.
And getting stronger.
And getting stronger because, you know, we're all just learning how to walk into our own powers.
Yes.
Yes. But like if I could have like anything to leave with people for a reflection moment or anything, is like just for you to reflect on like what are you doing to better people's lives, because I feel like a lot of the times we focus so much on all the negative things that we're doing or all of the things that we're not doing. So let's focus on what are we doing, and if you're not doing anything, what are you going to do to better someone's lives today, or to put a smile on someone's face, or you know, to be less cranky with your partner when you get home, or to say no to your child for something that you say yes to your child for something that you always say no to. You know, changing that. I always tell my husband that we need to change our lenses to more colorful ones. So like change those lenses on your eyes, change that to something beautiful. Just we need to see more beauty in life, but not the fake superficial beauty, like real raw beauty. Let's, you know, see beauty on people who usually nobody finds beautiful, right? This is the beauty of our community. At least this is what our community was built on. The beauty of, you know, the queer women and the queer men and the non-binary folks. We're here.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I don't know. I'm thinking about something else that I could say. Um, like at work and outside of work, I'm always telling people that HIV was just the best thing that ever happened in my life. And a lot of people don't understand why right away. Um, and the reason why for me is like, it's not like I was in a lost path, but I was in a path to be very lost. I was 20 something. I had everything I needed. I didn't need money because I had it.
Yeah.
I didn't need friends because I had it. Like I didn't need a lot. And I was starting to experiment with drugs, and I was single, and sex is so good, and everything is
Yeah.
So I feel like I was very close to things starting to be very bad.
Yeah.
So I feel like becoming HIV positive was almost like life or universe or creator or God, whatever way you see her, to like tell me like, and I'm gonna say that in a way that I say it to myself in my mind, bitch, wake up. It's time to, turn a new leaf.
Yes. Yeah, that wake up call that you sort of need. Like, sometimes you can just go on with your life and you can just breeze through, but other times your path sometimes is forged through pain, and you kind of find your way, and then you almost realize that if I didn't have that pain, I wouldn't have found my passion, the thing I love to do, the people that I've now met. You met your husband now because of that.
The love of my life.
You just found so much more with that. Like, you found exactly what you were supposed to be doing with your life because of that. And unfortunately, yes, it did have to be through that pain, but without that, you would just be somebody completely different. And
I would be. And it's funny that the HIV even brought me closer to accepting me as a person of color. because my mother is black, my father is white. So my whole life, I grew up trying to do anything I possibly could to walk people away from. It's almost like I was trying to catfish people and thinking I was not black.
Yeah.
So like I would blow dry my hair every morning, a little bit of makeup to make my nose a little bit thinner and a little bit less, potato like we call it in Brazil. My lips were too thick, and that was a concern for me. My hands are, all of those things.
Yes.
So like I would do everything to walk away from that.
Yeah.
Everything. And then I'm working at PWA. But of course, it was not just a click, right? It's a slow process that was happening for a long time within me.
Yeah.
Right? And George Floyd happens. And I'm there in a leadership position where I need to lead people throughout that same journey that I'm now going through within myself.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, okay, my big nose is not ugly. My curly hair is not ugly. My dark skin is not ugly.
Yeah.
My ashy elbow is not ugly. It's beautiful. It's who I am. It's part of living in a black body. Right?
Yeah. And I think you can sort of see that if you look more on sort of the social media side, that you see people almost becoming more sort of embracing their, you would say, blackness of that.
I remember the first event I put together for Black History Month was embrace your fucking blackness. Because that's what I was going through in that moment. I was learning how to embrace my own blackness.
Yeah.
I was learning how to, be proud of my mother's nose. Because I have my mother's nose. And she also had issues, because I remember growing up with my mother telling me that I needed to do this movement on my nose to make it less potato look like. So, embracing my curly hair, that was something that was very recent to me. That's why I needed to have that long hair, because I needed to be proud of it. I needed to be able to walk and be proud of my hair. Because for so long I was just blow drying and just taking every single hair out of my head that now I have very little.
I think the first time I met you, it was 4 years ago when you first were holding the AIDS vigil here at the Susan Green Museum. You had the long hair, and I just was like, oh, beautiful long curly hair. Oh, so pretty.
Thank you. That was me already, in my full-on blackness power. Yeah. And I was just very proud of myself. I still am very proud of myself. And it's funny because as I was going through this journey, it was almost like I was also holding my mother's hand and taking her through that journey as well. Because as much as we never actually had this we have had this similar conversations. We have spoken a lot about being in a black body. But it always kind of sort of was a prohibited conversation. Because I know I have dark skin, but of all of the darker skins in the world, my skin is very light. I've met beautiful black folks from Africa, and they tell me that I'm white if I go to Africa, and I know where they're coming from, because if you go to Africa, yes, I am a white person there. But in our world here, I'm a person of color, right? And in the world that I live in, I'm a person of color. I'm a black person. So I was talking about my mom. So we were both walking through that journey together, which was a really beautiful connection as mother and child thing. So it was really cool for us to go through that journey together. And also my sisters as well, because both of my sisters have very fair skin.
Okay.
but they have that beautiful thick hair. And both of them throughout their whole lives, and that's my mom's fault, we already had this conversation, but my mother thought that the best thing to do was to chemically treat their hair and make it straight. So to this day, they have a hard time accepting their own hair. And I'm just like, I wish I had your curls that are thick and tight, and I can make, a gorgeous big afro, but I can't because I don't even have hair. But those conversations started coming up. And those are things that we would never talk about it because you have to look a certain way. You have to walk away from your blackness.
Yeah.
And it's also that other comment that I hear a lot from white people, which is when I identify myself as black to someone, and they need to tell me, "Oh no, you're not black." Like, why? Why am I not black? And who are you to tell me what I am? And why this comment hurts me? Because I know that you're telling me this because in your mind, being black is a bad thing.
Yes.
And you see me as a good person. So why am I identifying myself with a bad thing? And that's why to me is so political and so important to remind everybody that I'm black. I'm black. I'm black.
And it's also saying that it's also removing a piece of your culture, your identity, that's
yes,
who you are. So by saying you're not part of that community, then you're taking away that piece of your identity too. So it is sort of that twofold thing of it's one, identifying the black community as something bad, but also taking away your a piece of that, your identity.
My identity, yes, that's so true. You and your beautiful words. And when you said that, it made me think growing up, and half of my cousins were of color. Most of them were mixed like me, lighter skin, but some of them had really dark skin, beautiful dark skin. And on my father's side, everybody was blonde and had blue eyes, blonde hair in Brazil, if you can believe it. My cousin, who is a very good friend of mine, Philip, we both are similar age. We both grew up queer. We actually kind of made out a couple times. Cousins, that's what we do. And he's a beautiful white man with green eyes. And I remember the first time I showed my husband a picture of my cousin and his husband, because my cousin's husband is a black man and my cousin is this blonde man. The first time I showed my husband a picture of my cousin and his husband, my Roy was like, "Oh, your cousin," pointing to the black man. "Your cousin is very good looking." And I'm like, "No, that's my cousin's husband. My cousin is the blonde man." So even growing up with those two different worlds was kind of effed up in my mind, because in one side of the family, I see the same thing I see on TV, which is those, quote, good-looking white people. And on the other side of my family, I'm seeing the people who look more like me, and who are on the bad side of the tracks on the telenovela I'm watching on my TV, or on the movie I'm watching on my TV. So it's I need to look more like this one, because this is the good Christian folks. That's what they need to look like.
But then also having that also division of being in two different worlds, two different communities, and then so that probably was a little bit weird too, of you're living on that edge of, am I a part of the white community with my dad's community, or am I part of the black community with my mom's community?
Yes. Or am I part of neither?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times too, within the black community, we also have what we call colorism, which is kind of a comment that we made where African folks would say that I'm white. So there's also that colorism kind of issue within the own community, and even within our own Black community. There are folks who would not accept me as a Black person, and I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be accepted by anybody. I know who I am.
And you have other very strong communities.
Yes, I do have like other communities where I can get my power from. And I think that's a beautiful thing about our queer community, which is the sort of like where I think us queers always go to.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we are on that subject about, Blackness and queerness, I think it's something that I wanted to mention before and I kind of quieted myself. But it's something important to mention because I think in the beginning when I opened up, I was talking about our beautiful and ideally accepting and diverse community. And at the same time, I feel like in our community, if you were not a part of that, if you don't fit in that
mold.
cookie cutter, white male, muscles, good looking gay man kind of thing with a good job and a good car and a good house and a good this and a good that, especially in Sault Ste. Marie, if you don't fit in that or if you don't have a connection to that, you're out. You're out. And that's everywhere in our community. It's not just a Sault Ste. Marie thing. This is in our community when it comes to finding a sexual partner. We all want a white man in a white horse. Like, no. Let's change how we're seeing the world. Like, let's see beauty elsewhere, guys. Yeah. So I think we need to have more conversations about, as queer people, how many doors are we opening for our queer community and how many doors in our community are we closing for the ones who don't look like us, like the trans folks, like the people of color folks, like the trans and folks of color who are like intersectionalizing everything.
And non-binary who
non-binaries
don't fit that mold of like, oh well, like it's almost like you're going back to like the stereotype with someone who's bisexual of like, oh, you have to be one or the other, you have to choose, and it's like, no, I'm non-binary because I don't choose the binary.
Yes. And like for me, I identify as non-binary. I have many different reasons as per why I identify as non-binary. The simple, easy question is I don't identify with being a man. I don't want to live with the responsibilities and expectations that society puts on the male person that, walks and lives in society. I am not that person. I'm not going to meet those expectations. So I would like not to be addressed as a man. But then people sometimes look at me and because, I have a beard and I live in a male body. Unfortunately, those are the cards I was dealt. And I have tried to change my body to something that would be more comfortable for me, a body that would be more comfortable for me to live in. And it's very expensive and I don't have money for it. So I learned to live in the body that I was given.
And sometimes
but I'm still not a man.
And you don't really need that like explanation. It's like, no, I just identify as this because I identify as this. And unfortunately in our like current climate, like just that simple answer of just because isn't enough for people. But
no.
Maybe one day, hopefully.
We'll get there. It requires people like you, me, to keep talking about it and keeping reminding people that we are not going anywhere.
No.
We're here. We're part of this society. We pay taxes too.
We're here, we're queer.
Yeah. Get used to it.
Alright, so I will finish up with sort of the question that we ask all our interviewees. of if in the future we were to have an exhibit on you, what would 3 objects be, or 3 sort of just anything to sort of headline for you, to be those 3 prominent things that sort of just scream Pedro?
Yes. Definitely the first one would be the feast. Black power, that would definitely be there. The second one would definitely be our queer colors. That for sure would be there as well. I think my whole life has been, even before I became HIV positive, my whole life has been dedicated to being an activist in our community. Even before I even knew I was doing activism, I was doing activism. So definitely activism would be there. And another thing that I think would be there as well is definitely one of those point ballet shoes.
Yes.
Because that is my biggest passion. To this day, I still sometimes dream that I'm on stage dancing, doing my pirouettes, and going around on stage and falling and hurting my feet, and my toes are bleeding, and this was where I was alive. So definitely that would be a part of the exposition, the Pedro Caio exposition.
I think those are that's a perfect answer. I think you it was just immediately I have 3 exactly. It's I already know. It's just right off the top of your head. Usually people are stumbling.
Can you tell I listen to the podcast? I do. I'm an avid listener, and I was very happy when I heard Brian Kelly. When I first moved to the zoo, he was my front door neighbor, and it was with all of the fears that I had, having someone who would actively cross the street every time he saw me to say, "Hi Pedro, how are you? I'm so happy to see you, my neighbor." That took that fear away. Mm-hmm. So having that person, mm-hmm. I don't think I even ever told him that. So hey Brian, kudos to you for being an awesome neighbor. But just having that person being mm-hmm. there, who never really said or did anything that was more than just being a nice person.
Yeah, just that neighborly thing.
Just that neighborly thing. Yeah. Yes, of oh, my neighbor is there, I'm going to cross the street mm-hmm. and say hi to him.
Yep.
And that was awesome because again, Roy and I are, to the world, we are 2 gay men. Mm-hmm. And Roy is also 20 years older than me. So we are the 2 gay men who are, of different age and of different color. And it's a lot for people to process. Because mm-hmm. I think when people first see us, they think it's a father and son thing, and mm-hmm. then I call him babe and he calls me babe, and then we kiss and we hold hands and we're very gentle to each other and we treat each other as couple. Mm-hmm. And to have that straight cis man who is also a reporter coming to our doorstep mm-hmm. and treating us like people, like human, it was very cool. Mm-hmm. And it really made a difference. Because it kind of signaled to me that, hey, Sault Ste. Marie is not that scary, mm-hmm. And I'm me. I've always been me. And I was me in front of Brian, and he was okay with me. Yeah. And to the point that anywhere I see Brian now, he remembers my name. He's like, hey, Pedro, how is Roy? And I've never had that before in mm-hmm. my life with neighbors. Unless growing up, yeah. But since I'm an adult, I've never been through that.
Welcome to small town life.
Right? Well, I didn't get that with my new neighbors. No, I'm joking. I really like my new neighbors. Some of them.
We won't say where you live.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so we've been at this for almost 2 hours.
87 years later.
SpongeBob meme.
SpongeBob meme. We have finally finished our interview. Thank you so much, Nicole. You're awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me. And yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
I feel like I cannot just do this and leave without saying this. But like the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, and I'm not saying this just because I'm here recording a podcast. You have heard me saying that in other tables. And I know other people who are listening to this have heard me saying that in different tables where nobody from the Sault Museum is at. So like the Sault Ste. Marie Museum has proven to me time and time over that this is a safe space for queer people and for people of color, of all walks of life, literally, of all walks of life. And I know that it's a slow process to change that within our community, to change that image of the museum being that space for community like it should be. And I know that that's going to be a hard process. It's going to be a long process, but we will get there because we are on the right path. Youth is here, you were here, Will is here, and you guys are doing this awesome job. And you know, we're going to get there. And you guys are doing the right thing. And it's awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always so nice to hear that people think that this is a safe space. And also, if you are listening to this in the month of June, come out to the Sault Ste. Marie Museum and you will have to check out the stairwell because every year for the month of June, I always put up just banners of pride flags.
Yes.
And
they're gorgeous.
Yes. I don't know, it just seems so magical to put all the flags up in there, so you'll have to come and see it for yourself.
Yes. And also the Sault Ste. Marie Museum has supported us as community in so many different ways with so many different events, and like it's just a supportive safe space. Like even on my work I find support in the museum, on my personal life I find support at the museum, on my at leisure part I come to the museum. So it really is a space where I just want to keep coming back. It's not boring, guys. You need to come to the Sault Museum. It's fun. They even have fun plants. Yes. I got a gorgeous plant here. You know that,
yes.
Right? Okay. She's still alive. Yay. She's gorgeous.
Perfect.
And I think that's a gorgeous way to end our podcast.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'll be here forever. Take this microphone away.
All right. Oh, I will stop the recording so that it's officially done.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, everyone.